So this is just the immune system on the one side, the lymphatic system on the other side. Might be small to read on your screen, but like I said, we'll get it emailed to you if you're interested. But this picture shows how interconnected these two systems are. So the immune system includes all of our lymph nodes. Many of you probably are familiar with lymph nodes, may have had lymph nodes removed from the armpits. Others have had lymph nodes removed from the abdomen or from the groin, depending on where cancers show up. And these lymph nodes live in the pits of our body. So the physical practice of yoga is really beneficial right there because we're opening and closing all the pits of the body. So we're kind of massaging those lymph nodes. We're helping that filtration that happens at the lymph nodes to be supported and to kind of move along. Those nodes are where our lymphatic fluid comes to get filtered out of all the cellular debris, the toxins from our body that accumulate during the day. It brings it back down to our heart center where our thymus gland is. And then that is where it gets refilled with all these wonderful T cells, these immune cells that then get redistributed throughout our body. So unlike the circulatory system, where we have a heart to pump the blood throughout our body, the lymphatic system does not have a pump. The only way that that lymph moves in a healthy way is through the movement of the tissues of our bodies. And I don't know about you, but I've had a pretty sedentary lifestyle in as much as, yes, I do gardening and yes, I walk every day. And of course, I practice yoga. But for the majority of my regular job throughout my life has been sitting at a computer. And when we do that, we kind of let that lymphatic fluid begins to accumulate in the belly, in the abdomen, in the pits of the body. It gets sluggish. It doesn't move in a healthy way. There's no good flow. So that is one of the best reasons for doing yoga. The lymphatic system is just underneath the skin. Those little lymphatic passageways along the arms and the legs run through the fascia. And if you're not familiar with the fascia, it is like a membrane that is underneath your skin that is on top of the muscle and the fat. And if you've ever skinned a chicken breast, you've seen that membrane that is under the skin and on top of the meat. And you usually just pull that off and discard it. Well, we have that same sort of membrane, and it can get kind of gunked up, it's like if we have an injury, there could be a scar there, so that membrane can get really tight. And that is also where those lymphatic passageways are. So if you even just lay a nickel on your skin, you're probably touching a lymphatic passageway. So they're not very deep. So things like self-massage can also be beneficial for our lymphatic system. And we'll talk more about that really fun practice later on. So these two systems overlap and complement each other. And again, you'll get to have this in your presentation email later on. So moving on to the immune system. Like I said, when we practice the body dashboard, when we have healthy daily habits that nourish ourselves, we open our window of tolerance. We are able to withstand more challenge when it comes our way because we have that healthy baseline. But it's not like a muscle that we can just strengthen. Like by exercising it over and over again. It is also not something that we can just take a bunch of vitamin C or something like that to be able to go, oh, it's flu season. I'm just going to take vitamin C and that'll strengthen my immune system. Well, what you don't use, you secrete out of your elimination anyway. But we can support it by having that healthy baseline. Unfortunately, it can be suppressed by things like stress or chemotherapy and other stressors. The cells, tissues, and organs work together to protect your body from the bacteria and the toxins, and they help to support that wound healing. So again, that's that T cell that goes throughout the lymphatic fluid throughout your body that supports that wound healing. We have two different kinds of immunity. We've got the innate immunity, that's like our first line defense, our skin, our nasal passages. Again, yoga here is very focused on nasal breathing because we do have that built-in filtration system at the nose. The air gets not only filtered, but it also gets the humidified and either warmed or cooled so that our body can accept it better. And it also is kind of the part of our system that recognizes invaders. Adaptive immunity is when they do have invaders like the flu or the cold, and we start to adapt to that by building our own antibodies. And that is exactly what vaccines are meant to do. And that is to support our adaptive immunity. Here is a little bit of something that we're going to expose you to so you can create the antibodies to be able to fight it. So that's our immune system in a nutshell. Stress, like I said, can really suppress that immune system. And when the stress response is activated too much of the time, we begin to get exhausted from it. We begin to get overwhelmed and we can no longer meet those responses. We're not meant to be in stress, in fight or flight for extended periods of time. That system is wonderful. It protects us, but it is designed to meet short-term stress, real threats to our safety. And we have this chronic day-to-day stress in our culture that we have now. So we secrete the adrenaline when we have that really immediate thing, like when you're driving your car and suddenly a kid pulls out in front of you on your bike, you feel that rush into your hands. Maybe you feel a clenching in your belly. You can feel that adrenaline secrete, and then it backs off. And then also at that same time, cortisol is secreted, and that is to to keep you a little bit on guard. So there's been a threat. It's dissipated now, but we still don't want to totally let our guard down. And many of us live in that space almost 24/7, where we're not really letting our guard down. And too much of that cortisol can stimulate our appetite because in our biological magnificence, we're designed to be ready to meet that threat. So what helps us to be able to run, to be able to fight? Strong muscles, lots of blood sugar so that we have lots of energy. So of course our appetite is going to be stimulated. We're designed to meet those threats. And also cortisol dampens the immune cell function, and it can begin to make you less able to meet those threats, making you susceptible to infection and slowing the rate of your healing. So support ways we can support this is by doing things that intentionally bring healthy stress, because not all stress is bad. Some stress is really good, right? When we're training for a marathon or something like that, we want to practice, we want to run, we want to get a little bit stronger, a little bit more limber. Um, we that way we can master it, we can meet that stress. So yoga is a wonderful way to practice doing that. We can practice doing things that are stressors that we choose to do in a controlled and safe environment. And then we can recover from those stresses, and we can feel in our bodies what it feels like to be stressed, maybe even a little anxious, maybe feel a little bit off balance, and then to come back into your body to breathe deeply and recover. That's what's known as heart rate variability. Maybe you might have heard of that, but it's the ability for your nervous system recover after we have those stressors, like the kid riding out in front of us on a bike, which is, our modern day version of what we were originally designed to do, which is, meet the threat of a bear or saber-toothed tiger or something out in the wild. We have that capacity within us. Again, we want to curb chronic stress or increase our window of tolerance. So just like we can increase the window of tolerance of our immune system, we can also do the same thing with our nervous systems. And our nervous systems are the things that secrete the hormones that suppress the immune system. So it's really important to make sure that our window of tolerance for the immune system, for the nervous system, is as wide as possible too. Support practices just like the body dashboard, those basic needs that we have, our physical need to have nourishment, to be fed, to be sheltered, to be connected. That also helps the window of tolerance for our nervous system so that we're not secreting those stress hormones all the time. Again, practice physical practice, asanas in the yoga postures to move the tissues of the body, nose breathing to filter the air, pranayama, which is breathing practices. So that's beyond nose breathing. Those are things like slowing down the breath intentionally, doing belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, balanced breathing. Let's see. And then not only that, but when you do that nose breathing, it increases the nitric oxide in our blood, which helps to get your oxygen better distributed and absorbed throughout your body. And we do create that nitric oxide naturally in our bodies. And if you're interested in that, you can Google to find out more. And then the lymphatic system, like I said, that is that physical symptom of passageways that runs from our fingertips down to our toes. It gets filtered at all the pits of our body. We can, and the lymphatic system, oddly enough, is 40% of the fluid in our body. So when we think of our bodies, they are approximately 70% fluid. So more than half of that is actually this lymphatic fluid that has no pump to move it around our body. It carries the immune cells, it kills rogue cancer cells, as well as dispose of toxic waste. Movement of the diaphragm, doing those pranayama or breathing practices can help assist in getting that venous blood back up to the heart so that it can be filtered and redistributed throughout our bodies and get back to the thymus gland. Let's see. And then again, especially with people who have had lymph nodes removed, lymphedema is very common. That's that swelling of the lymphatic vessels. A lot of times you'll notice swelling in your hands and feet, or maybe numbness or tingling. So yoga can help to kind of redistribute how that lymphatic fluid is flowing. So you can learn by stretching and lengthening those lymphatic vessels that have probably been shortened. And yoga is just a little bit at a time. So a lot of times you might see people doing yoga postures on videos or the covers of magazines, and their, arms are straight up in the air and they're standing on one leg, and you're like, forget it, man, I'm never doing that. But yoga can just be sitting up tall and breathing intentionally and drawing your diaphragm up and in to support your spine. And that also, when you draw that diaphragm up and in, you're kind of stimulating the solar plexus, which is a big gathering of nerves right there at your center. And you're also supporting the blood and the lymphatic flow. Let's see here. and lymphedema symptoms. And you probably, if you have any of these symptoms, definitely talk to your doctor about what you might be experiencing. But the thing about the symptoms, and if you have lymphedema, you're probably aware of how you can experience, like I said, the numbness, the weakness, the shortening of, and the lessening maybe of the capacity to reach. Um, Yoga helps us to tune into our bodies in a way that if you're in your thinking mind a lot, you might not really practice much. And I know sometimes until I am on my mat, that's probably the first intentional breath I have had all day, is when I sit down on my mat and I take a breath. Now, I don't know how many of you, and I didn't think to ask, but when we did our finding presence practice together at the beginning, when you felt your feet on the ground, when you noticed your breath at your nostrils, was that maybe the first time you noticed your breath or noticed your feet on the ground all day? I mean, really? Yeah. We don't really pay that close of attention to ourselves. I have known people who have had issues and actually have been one of those people with different physical issues that you just kind of ignore or not take very seriously. And one of the quotes that I always remember hearing is yoga helps you to listen to the whispers of your body so that you don't later have to listen to the screams. And sometimes, no matter what you do, there's going to be screams, obviously. Sometimes you just simply cannot control that. But the power of being able to notice, my limbs, my arm feels a little heavy today. Something that might go completely under your radar if you really weren't in tune with your body. Or, wow, my ankle looks a little swollen this morning. Maybe I'm going to keep an eye on that. Or maybe, even better, I'm going to sit down and put my feet up and put some ice on it and message my doctor. Just to be on the safe side, I'll just be proactive as soon as I notice something like that, or whatever it might be for you. And it may not be anything about lymphedema. It could be just any kind of thing that you might notice, a little bit of shortness or of breath, or a stitch in your side that maybe hasn't been going away. Yoga helps us to tune into ourselves. We spend so much time in our head and so much time taking care of other people and other issues that we tend to put ourselves on the back burner. And yoga helps you to reconnect to yourself in a way that can be very powerful and really healthy in a number of ways. So again, these slides will be emailed to you, so I'm not going to read them word for word, but I do want to make sure to get to the support practices, that gentle stretching. Maybe when you start your yoga practice, all you do is sit up nice and tall and intentionally breathe. That's yoga. And maybe the next time you start, you just begin to lift your hands to your heart and then put them back down. Or maybe you start to open your arms up wide and bring them back to center. And maybe the first time you practice yoga, you're invited to lift your arms up towards your ears. And maybe some people will come up to shoulder height. Maybe some people will come all the way up alongside the ears. Maybe your reach will be down here and your hands will be pointed down at the ground. But it's your practice. It's not anything like everybody has to do the same thing at the same time in the same way. This is your opportunity to reconnect with yourself and what you really need to really, kind of be your own cheerleader, to be your own guide, to really listen to what you need. Um, So we've got upper extremity asanas. That's doing the arms, the shoulders, support practices for your neck, and we'll do a little physical practice here towards the end. Lower extremity asanas. So when we do our Friday noon classes, I usually practice that either at least with and often from a chair, because like I said, many of us find ourselves in chairs a lot of the time. Sometimes maybe you're tired or you don't have time to get away from your desk. Maybe you have had a recent surgery and you're unsteady on your feet. Wonderful thing about yoga, what if you sprain your ankle? Yes, you can still do your yoga from your chair. You can still do the deep breathing. You can still do things that support the movement of the tissues of your body. We can do those lower extremity practices even from the chair, or we can stand and use the chair for balance, which is really great when you're starting a yoga practice. And that is one of the things that things like weightlifting don't really take into account is creating and cultivating balance, which is really important as we get older, no matter what our health level is. And then, like I said, the breathing practices and then self massage. That's Abhyanga. You may have heard it called lymphatic massage. You might have even been told to practice that and maybe not really have an idea of what that looks like. So we'll make sure to talk about that a little bit more here too.